I think we're live. Are we live? I think we're live.
Yes, I believe we are.
Live. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, hello. Welcome to the who are we? What are we doing?
We are the cyber agony, the cyber security agony uncles. Oh, this is going so well.
This is what happens when the summer is over and we're moving into the autumn. We just forget all about everything. So anyway, I'm Uncle Stephen.
Hello, Uncle Rich. Good morning. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. So to jump straight in, the question that's been sent in to us for this month is as follows. Dear Agony Uncles, I'm a SOC analyst, and last month I made a mistake that I'm still losing sleep over. We got an alert that looked like routine noise, a similar pattern to false positives we've been seeing all week from a dodgy update. I triaged it as low priority and moved on to the mountain of other tickets in the queue. Turns out it wasn't noise. It was the early stage of a ransomware attack. Luckily, our endpoint protection caught it before it spread too far, and we contained it within a few hours. No data loss, no ransom paid, minimal disruption. Management have been great about it. They said everyone makes mistakes, praised the team for the quick response, and moved on. But here's my problem. I haven't told anyone the full truth. In my incident report, I said I initially assessed it as lower priority given the alert volume, but I didn't say that I completely dismissed it. I didn't mention that I didn't even do the basic checks I should have. My team lead thinks I just deprioritized it slightly, not that I basically ignored it. Everyone's moved on, but I feel like a fraud. Do I come clean now and risk looking worse for the cover-up, or do I just learn from this privately and be better going forward? I'm terrified that if I'm honest now, I'll lose my job or destroy the trust I've built. But I also can't shake the feeling that I'm not the person my colleagues think I am. Signed, Sleep is in the SOC.
No, that's a very interesting one, and I suspect a reasonably common situation that SOC analysts find themselves in. I suppose there's two aspects to this that immediately jump out at me, and one is around why was this particular event not fully triaged, which is kind of structural around the way that the information is coming into the SIEM, the supplementary information. Where were the triggers that would make you think this particular thing that looks exactly like all these other things means that this one is probably not okay. This one is potentially an indicator of compromise. So we can have a little think about what's going on there. And the other side of it is what is the best approach when you have screwed up something? And I know it's kind of starting with that one. I've spent a lot of time talking about these sorts of things, haven't we, Rich, over the years? But I'm very strongly of the belief that you need to put your hands up when you get things wrong. But I also am very strongly of the belief that you need to be working in an environment where when you bring a mistake or an issue or a problem to your colleagues or your superiors, the starting point from everybody else needs to be, what can I do to help sort this out? How do I get this back to being where it should be? And then once we're all working together and dealing with it, we'll then later, when the pressure's off and the emotions have calmed down a bit, we'll have a look at how could we avoid being in this situation again in the future, which is the link back to, in my mind, back to why was there nothing in the SIEM that made this alert stand out as being something that that needed to be triaged. What are your thoughts, Rich?
Yeah, I'm broadly in agreement with everything you just said. There does need to be an environment at work where you can get something wrong and not be in fear of your job over it.
Yeah.
There has to be room for improvement, because and open, frank, and honest discussions, because otherwise you're working in a hellhole.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Now, with this, yes, they might have screwed up, but my feeling is that they're shouldering far more responsibility in their own mind than they actually need to, because you're right. The alert probably should have been clearer, potentially should have been clearer. Then they would have known to triage it. Because let's be honest, most SOC analysts are not the decision makers in security in the business for things like process and the more senior level stuff. So they're there at the coalface, triaging lots of alerts day in, day out. And yes, they will know what to look for, and yes, they should know what to look for. Now, if there's a huge difference between not catching something and willfully ignoring it.
Yeah, agreed.
No, I think intent's fairly important there, but I do feel that the guilt is actually going beyond their level of responsibility in the business.
I think you're right, and I think that could be seen as a good thing, as in this particular SOC analyst clearly takes their role very seriously and actually properly understands why they're doing what they're doing, which is great. I mean, there are a lot of people, that I've worked with over the years. I'm sure you as well have as well, that just see something as you just perform the acts, you go through it, you do the job, you go home at the end of it, and you're done.
Yeah.
Whoever this person is, they clearly understand the reason why they're supposed to be triaging these events, and they look to me as if they really want to be doing it right. So it looks, that actually touches on another concept that again you and I have talked about quite a lot over the years. But why do people not do a perfect job? So why is it that when you've got somebody who's doing a role, things don't always come out absolutely bang on perfect every time? And there are really only three categories. I'll stand by this. I've said this a lot over the years, but I'll stand by it. It's either they don't know what good looks like, as in they need education as to what it is, what the outcomes are supposed to be, and how we're supposed to get those outcomes, and what the standards are, and what the quality is. And once given that information, we'll be able to deliver good regularly, repeatedly. Yeah. Okay. You then get the category of understands what good looks like, but will never be able to actually deliver it. And my usual example of that one is I can look at the Picasso and say, bloody hell, that's a really good painting. Give me a paintbrush and a blank canvas and I will not produce you a Picasso, and I will never produce you a Picasso. So yeah, I understand full well that it's good and why it's good, but I couldn't do it no matter how hard. If you've got people in roles where they understand good, but they don't, then just not going to be able to deliver it, you've got the person in the wrong role, and that's a managerial issue.
Yeah.
And finally, and you do come across these people, but they are fortunately relatively rare. There are people that do understand what good looks like, but just can't be asked to deliver it. They're just not engaged for whatever reason. They don't like the job. They don't like you as a line manager. They wish they'd never picked up cybersecurity as a career and really want to go and become a musician in an indie band somewhere. You know what I mean? It's like they're just it's performative. They're just going through the motions. If it all goes wrong, it's like, well, I hate this anyway, so I don't really care. Those people, they're in the wrong job. There's not much you can do under those circumstances, so long as you've had a look at the like the two-factor, Hertzberg's two-factor stuff around motivation. And and as a manager or as an organization, you're doing the best you can to remove the demotivating factors and to focus the business and your your employees on the motivating factors, responsibility, authority for your own actions, and all of those sorts of things. If you've done all of that and they still hate the job, then quite frankly, this person would be happier somewhere else. So anyway, it looks like in this particular case, we've got somebody who's in the first category here. They're pretty close to understanding what good looks like. They didn't on that occasion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing. On the whole learning curve, they might not be fully competent at knowing what good looks like. There's different learning curves for every aspect of every job.
Yeah.
So it might well be that, yes, they're not fully competent at knowing what good looks like, but I would actually suggest that the fact that they feel guilty about it and understand what they should have done puts them far closer to being competent at knowing what good.
Oh yeah, no, completely, yeah. No, definitely. So I think whoever's the SOC manager or the SOC lead for this particular team should recognise that they've got an analyst there that probably needs a little bit of support and a little bit of encouragement and maybe modicum of training, but actually is trying hard to do the right stuff. And those are the people you want people with aptitude, because you can train them on the technical stuff. If they haven't got aptitude or they just don't get it, then you're really stuck. But I suppose then looking at it the other way around, the circumstances appear to be that there've been some or other change that have been put in place that have been generating a lot of noise in the SOC, and this particular alert looked like another instance of stuff that had recently appeared that was being very noisy. It is remarkably difficult to pick out the needle in the haystack under those circumstances. I think one of the things that we like to do is encourage our analysts to feed back refinements, tuning, improvements, and whatever, so that ideally, obviously, the stuff that you want to see on that alerts page in your visibility tooling, everything there should be something that you look at and go, right, I actually really do need to triage that. So you've been through many rounds of looking at things, discovering that that's actually normal behavior in the environment, and then tuning those things out, as it were, but not just deleting them and getting rid of them, but actually doing something with them. And there is a bit of an art to doing that, but it starts off with asking the questions of yourself. If I see this particular event alert in isolation, can that be an indicator of compromise? Would I be able to look at that thing and say, I genuinely believe something bad is going on in this environment, I need to delve into it? And if the answer's no to that, at a high level, the next question would be, well, is this good supplementary information that I would need if I found myself in an incident and I wanted to go and fully triage stuff? And a good example of that one would be log on, log off events. It's very hard to tell the difference between a legitimate admin log on, log off event that happen all the time and somebody who's got hold of an admin account and is using it, has compromised it and is using it for malicious activity. In isolation, the log on, log off events aren't that helpful. But if you look at the other way around, if you know that the account's been compromised, you want to have all that information. Where has this account been used? What's been done under the auspices of this account? In which case, you don't want it to be an alert, because that's just filling up your alerts page, but you do want it as a log. And then there's a kind of a tier below that, which is, well, actually, there's no valuable security information in this event at all. Can't think of any circumstances where I would use this stuff. And you got to ask, is it really worth ingesting and processing and holding those things? So, and then looking at a situation like this where there's a crossover between a change which has generated, and now the change was badly implemented, in my opinion. here. If your security tooling is firing because there's been, what was it? Was it an upgrade? I can't remember now. What it was an update to something.
It's a so-called dodgy update.
The dodgy update, yeah. So if an update happens and your security tooling starts firing, that shows that the testing associated with the update wasn't thorough enough. Because security visibility is not just something that happens kind of in isolation in a little silo of its own. It's an integral part of whether your service is running right or not. So, your stand-up testing needs to be, let's see, if it's a patch or an upgrade or whatever, does the device stand back up again afterwards? Does it do all of its business processes in the way that it's supposed to be doing? And you also got to chuck into there, have you screwed up your security visibility, or have you introduced any vulnerabilities through doing this particular thing? So that side of it clearly hadn't been done very well. Putting that to one side partially, the SOC should have been in a position, as the SOC as a group, or the processes within the SOC, there should have been something that caught that and said, okay, we've now had a dodgy update. It's generating absolutely loads of superfluous alerts that are actually now normal behavior for this particular app or server or component device, whatever it might be. That should have been very specifically tuned down, in my opinion. So you're looking at, and not just, okay, well, we'll just stop alerting on this particular rule, whatever the rule or rules are that are firing. You need to look at it and say, okay, we now know that this particular app under these particular circumstances now generates these alerts, which are, whilst they're not false positives, because the alert is firing on something which is real, it doesn't matter. It's not, it's not an indicator of compromise anymore. So modify the rule in such a way that it isn't that particular known good stuff doesn't fire an alert anymore. Now, if you're lucky and you've got some skill in this process, you would find that the one that was actually potential ransomware didn't fit into that category of now known new good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in an ideal world, when the first test batch of machines had this update applied, I'm just going to assume it's a Windows update on a bunch of laptops. When the first test bunch had this update applied and the scene got noisy with regard to those machines and that particular update, that's when the tuning should have happened, once they were happy that the machines worked with that update. And then that way, when the update was rolled out to a wider user base, or a wider base of computers, you would have no risk of flooding the scene, and this alert would have stood out a bit more. So I think there's obviously some process gains to be had there as well. The thing I keep coming back to, though, which isn't to do with the SIEM, the alerts, the update, or anything else, is that we work in an industry where honesty and integrity are the cornerstone of the whole thing, about everything we do. Essentially. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily apply to the snake oil salesman in the industry.
Really? Are there some?
I've met one or two. I mean, I think they've gone on to greener pastures, so maybe the industry's fine now. But those people notwithstanding, I strongly believe that honesty and integrity are a key part. So I think that although this person is feeling very guilty about mishandling that particular security event, I think they should come clean to their manager if they're in an environment where they can do so safely. I think if you are speaking politically about it, there's enough mitigating factors in there to sort of soften the blow of owning up to not triaging this fully and making that mistake. I also think there's quite a strong chance that their line manager would say, you know what, you said you triaged it, you hadn't. And you hadn't. That is an issue. But it was caught, it was dealt with, and it's a learning experience. I think any manager worth their salt would probably take it on the chin. It might lead to a certain amount of disciplinary chat or noise, but I think given some of the mitigations we've talked about, the mitigating factors, I don't think it would be career ending.
No, I don't think so either. And you've got to look at it in the context of this, that whatever this particular alert, this single event alert, was lost in a soup of unimportant things.
Yeah.
Now, you only know that this one was important with hindsight.
Absolutely.
Okay. Which comes back to the tuning hadn't been done to make this one stand out. So it just appeared to be yet another of hundreds, thousands. I mean, often you can get thousands to tens of thousands of these spurious alerts when changes get made. They don't tend to happen as, oh, here's half a dozen. We've made a dodgy update, and it's generated a dozen extra alerts, and I don't feel like I can triage them. Like really, any analyst worth their salt would look at that and actually go, yeah, well, I am going to triage those and work out what's going on. So this must be a pool of things which are in like of a quantity where you literally couldn't get through each one.
Yeah.
So you have to, under those circumstances, make a judgment call about whether all or none of these are important.
Yeah.
So there should be the fact that in there was one that was important and it didn't get identified. It got seen, but it didn't get identified as flagging up as anything unusual. I don't think that you can criticize a SOC analyst for that, because unless the SIEM is being, or the visibility tooling is being very proactively managed, you end up with so many alerts that you literally can't go through every one. You're looking for things that make potential compromises stand out, and this one clearly didn't. So I think I would be cautious of going in saying to my manager, I completely screwed this whole thing up, it's all on me, because that just gives everybody if you work in an environment where there's a temptation for scapegoating, then that you're just setting yourself up for a kicking there. But
exactly.
The other way to look at it, though, is that you should. I think I would go back and say, okay, with hindsight, I now I fully understand. I should have identified this and triaged it better. Can we please get a quick workshop together so that we can identify how to make this alert stand out in the future, because it didn't this time. And out of the 10,000 things that I could have looked at, I didn't look at that one because it looked like 9,999 of the others.
Yeah, exactly. And also, you can bet your boots that this analyst didn't miss the following alerts as this malware spread across the network and their endpoint protection software started flagging it up.
No, exactly, and that's when you get good at writing the rules around these things, you can actually very quickly get to a point where you're writing correlated rules. So if this happens and this happens, or that happens, raise the severity of this thing, because these events don't happen in a combination for anything other than malicious reasons. So that it isn't just literally a case of, well, how the hell do I pick out from this Windows alert what's the bit that makes me think this one is malicious? That can be very hard. But in the context of, well, if one of these fires and my antivirus, and Windows Defender is kicked off about, it's just blocked a whole load of things, can we get the feedback loop so that we can then say, oh, we need to raise the severity of this particular alert because it's the same device with the same executable or the same DLL being called or whatever it may be. So you can't tell from one, but in combination with the other, you then have got something better to look for that you can then use to go across the rest of the estate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would forgive an analyst for missing one alert. What I wouldn't forgive them for is if 10 minutes later everything was firing, screaming at you to say,
yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
There's a big difference between missing the very first event, and missing an entire campaign.
Actually, and that raises there's a lot of really good fundamental principles that we've got into this particular question this month. You almost never identify compromise at the beginning. So if you look
Okay.
at the kill chain actually starts out with a whole load of things that are going on, which you could never see because they're in the mind of the attacker.
Yeah.
Why are they choosing you? What are they intending to do? And all of this stuff. So, and that's where the compromise, that's where the attack is starting. It's not starting with the technical bit that they throw at you. So you get the okay, we will never be inside the minds of the people doing these things. We can have a guess as to what is going on, but we don't really know. So we don't know when they've started to focus on us. They might then do a whole load of reconnaissance, gathering information about us to look for weaknesses that can then be exploited. If we're really, really, really good on our visibility, security visibility stuff, we might pick up some anomalies at that point, but that, it's not going to be reliable. It's good when you can do it, but don't bet your house on it. And then there's a bit they take it all back in house again, as it were, to the attackers, and it's like, okay, we now know what vulnerabilities there are. Let's plan out, develop, adjust, practice until we've got our tooling and our processes right, that we know that when we fire it at this particular organization, it's going to stick and it's going to work. Even to the point of social engineering, scattered spider asking for password changes. They didn't wake up one day and go, damn good idea, let me just get on the phone and see if I can persuade somebody to change the password. They will have sat down as a loose group and gone, well, okay, how do you get a help desk to change a password? What are the kind of questions the help desk's going to ask, so that I can go in there prepared? And it's not like, you phone up the help desk and they say, oh yeah, what's the user account? And you go, oh shit, I hadn't actually thought I needed a user account. Oh, wait a minute. So there's loads of stuff that's going on again that you would never see.
Those APTs must have some pretty solid project managers. Administration arm.
yeah, but it's certainly when you're looking at the more sophisticated attackers, actually even the script kiddies are doing, but they're just doing this stuff in the back of their heads. So but the thought processes are there. So the further you can move your visibility towards the beginning of the compromise, the more chance you've got of identifying it, detecting it and containing it, and so on. But what we're saying here about this particular alert, lost in a soup of other alerts, if that was generated by ransomware, there's a whole load of stuff that had happened prior to that alert triggering. The ransomware, or at least some components of the ransomware, must already be in your estate for that alert to have triggered. So as part of the how can we improve the visibility to identify why this alert was the one that we should have, how would I have caught this alert in all this other stuff? Actually, the answer may be you could never have caught that alert. You could only ever know with hindsight that particular alert was associated with something that you at that point didn't know was going on. So really the approach needs to be to take this back, to move left, or whatever. Is that what they say? What the kids say? I don't know. But shift left with all of this, so that you're asking the question, how did I not know that there was either malware or a component of malware or ransomware or whatever in my environment? How come I'd missed the initial compromise? How come I'd missed the download and initial execution of this stuff? The stuff prior to this particular event, which clearly didn't get picked up. And that's an important question to ask as part of this environment, part of this investigation as well.
Yeah, and in fact, that's what I'd probably lead with. I would say to my manager something along the lines of, we talked about this before. I said I didn't do the level of triage that I should have done because it didn't stand out enough. But actually thinking about it, there's a whole attack chain that wasn't picked up within the SOC before that. So let's try and get ahead of it for next time.
Yeah.
That way you can absolve your guilt and also make good progress.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the progress is built on mistakes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So there are organizations that will just take the opportunity to just blame people for things. It's so it's not every organization where you can have constructive discussions around these sorts of things.
Yeah.
If you're working in an organization like that, then you probably, at some point something's going to go wrong and they're going to blame you for it regardless. So it's really ask the question of yourself, is this the right place for me to be working, or would I prefer to be working in an organization that actually cares more about getting the job done right than about blaming people when the job goes wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that just about wraps it up. And unless you've got anything else on the topic.
No, I don't think so. I mean, as we say, we've covered some really fundamental principles of how to run a secure service.
This episode of the podcast could very well have been a talk at a conference or something.
I can see this one being referenced by our SOC lead when she's training the analysts on things. What do you do when things go wrong and you miss something? Well, have a listen to Rich and Steve.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Well, I suppose that wraps it up for this month.
Yeah, I think it does. So yeah, thank you all very much for tuning in. If you have any suggestions, by the way, do ping them over. We're always happy to answer any questions on anything cyber based, or at least rant about it, even if we can't fix it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, send over any questions that you've got, and in the meantime, hope you have a great month, and we'll speak to you next month.